Pretty in Pink by David Reinold. It was winter time, but any holiday cheer would have been in distasteful irony. There was nothing to be happy about. Something was missing, a facet of life in Ponyville, something I had always taken for granted. I never even considered that one day I might be without it. This facet took the form of a keen and bubbly mare who always wore a smile and made a point to share that smile with every pony. But she no longer wore a smile. Her eyes were closed and she was almost frowning. It was unnatural for her. And when I spun the thoughts around in my mind, I didn't like the conclusions I drew. There would be no more parties. There would be no more giggling. And in fact, Ponyville would be very lucky if any pony was ever happy again. My heart clouded over from the snowstorm of emotion. After the procession, I sat in the library for what felt like hours, just sitting there, staring at the floor, avoiding thinking at all costs. At that point, thinking would be rather masochistic if not suicidal. There was too much to think about, and no good could have been drawn from thinking about it. Not even Rainbow Dash could clear the cloud that hung over Ponyville. But try as I might to rid my mind of all semblance of thought, I couldn't keep the gears from turning. My mind wasn't conditioned to the lack of thought. I gave up and allowed myself to process it all.
It was all so sudden.
This first, inevitable thought entered my mind, and I let it run.
One day she was the same giggly ball of fun who I'd spent nearly every day of my life in Ponyville with. Then the next day she was...
I couldn't think any further. I pushed all thoughts away again as the tears began to flow. I lay flat on the floor with my teeth gritted, sobbing. I remained there for the rest of the evening, barely conscious. I hardly noticed when Spike gently lifted my head and put a pillow underneath. I only half noticed when, a minute later, he lay a blanket over me.
I should have noticed sooner,
Was the last thought to cross my mind before sleep gripped me. The next morning, I woke up feeling dead inside. The chill of the winter had penetrated my heart. I lay in that same spot for several hours that morning. My body seemed to think that if I didn't do anything that day, perhaps the day wouldn't happen at all. But it was wishful thinking. That became clear when a soft tap at the door caught my attention. Then a voice followed.
Can I come in?
I still stayed where I was for a lack of energy, willpower, or any semblance of motivation, so in my stead, Spike opened the door. Applejack wandered in and took a seat next to me.
I just wanted to talk is all. I've been getting a mite restless and I thought talking it over might do us both some good.
I grunted in acknowledgement.
As just no pony saw it coming. She must have known. She didn't tell any pony. I can only wonder why.
I grunted again in acknowledgement. Applejack seemed frustrated at this.
Well, I might help you. Honestly, all you want to do is talking. Here y'all can hardly put in a word or two.
Applejack got up and went back outside. A moment later, I heard Rarity's voice. The two of them were talking. A second later, Rarity came in.
Come on, get up.
Why?
I barely mumbled the question.
We're not going to let you sit here and rot in your own depression. Some fresh air will do you some good.
I still refused to get up, so Rarity cast a levitation spell.
Come on, we are leaving.
Against my will, I was magically dragged outside.
Where are you taking me?
I again mumbled. Rarity, instead of replying, just sighed.
You still have friends left, Twilight. Being one pony short does not justify neglecting the rest. We all need to cope, but if any coping is going to be done, we need you to be there with us. And you know what else, Twilight?
What?
I asked, hardly caring, but humoring her anyway.
You need us there with you. That's a fact.
I was silent for the rest of the trip. The loneliness of the cold blinded me to my companions. Sugar Cube Corner was a bittersweet sight. Even more so bittersweet was the fact that the rest of my friends stood there, but the frizzy-maned bouncing blur of pink was not amongst them. I closed my eyes and tried to shut it all out.
Twilight, you need to stand up now.
I heard Rarity's voice say. I scoffed silently. Easy enough for the independent one to say.
Twi, I can honestly say I didn't expect y'all to crumble this easy like.
Of course, the farm pony would know all about keeping one's composure.
Twilight, come on. She'd want us to move on. She'd hate to see us suffer for her.
Yeah, Rainbow Dash, the one pony that was never faced by anything. She would say that.
Be strong, Twilight.
My eyes opened wide. The last one was Fluttershy. Even Fluttershy, the most emotionally fragile pony I knew, was standing up tall. Even Fluttershy, the frail and tender Pegasus who was afraid of everything, was looking her emotions in the eye and staring them down, daring to consume her. Even Fluttershy. I realized, then and there, that I was an absolute mess. I closed my eyes tight and gritted my teeth again, preparing for the tears. Rarity released her levitation spell, and I fell to the ground with a light thud. With this, I was pulled away from my emotions for a brief moment by what I felt around me.
The ground.
I hadn't noticed earlier, but there was a light snow on the ground.
Of course.
I thought.
It's winter. Winter.
The thought processed for a moment, after which I took a deep breath and stood up, tears in my eyes but a weak smile across my face.
Any pony want to go ice skating?
In the midst of icy despair, my heart began to thaw. We all found skates and picked out a lake that had good, solid ice. Rarity was absolutely right. The fresh air was like breathing in pure adrenaline. I felt awake. I felt aware. The tears had long since crusted over, and my eyes were dry. I felt like everything would be alright, and that the one who couldn't be here with us would be smiling down at us, just knowing that we were doing what she always encouraged, having fun with one another. I was just as horrible at skating as I was the previous time, during my first winter wrap-up experience. But this time, I was able to laugh at my mistakes. This time, I didn't have any goals to accomplish or tasks to complete. By this time, trying was all that mattered. But there was still a fragment of that feeling at the pit of my stomach. I knew that my late friend would have wanted to be here with us. To be the one showing me how to skate. It still tore me up a bit that she didn't get a chance to do at least that. After an hour or so of skating and copious amounts of tear-ridden giggling, we all headed over to Sweet Apple Acres, where Applejack had a roaring fire going and apple pies baking in the oven.
Glad to see y'all come round, Twi.
Applejack commented as she poured cider for all of us.
I was worried about you.
I sipped the warm cider gingerly. The transition from cool, fresh air to warm, welcoming cider worked wonders on my mind.
Thanks, Applejack.
I paused for a moment and take another sip.
It was upsetting to me particularly. When I was just a filly, Princess Celestia told me that I had more latent talents waiting to be uncovered. One of those talents was supposedly the ability to see the future. And so, in the back of my mind this entire time, I've been wondering why that latent ability couldn't have surfaced sooner. If I could have foreseen what was going to happen, I might have... Okay, maybe I couldn't have prevented it, but I could have made her last week's more enjoyable. More fun. More... something. Oh, sorry. You know, Twilight,
Fluttershy cut in.
if you really feel bad about it, there's one thing you can do to get it off your mind. Oh? And what's that? You could talk to Nurse Redheart and ask her for details. I'm sure she'll tell you what you want to know.
I mulled this over. It did seem like a good idea. There was the slightest hint of dread, but I ignored it. I finished my cider and partook in some apple pie, and thanked Applejack for everything before leaving to find Nurse Redheart's office. In my heart, the sun crept through the clouds.
So, what's the
is the
issue?
issue?
I asked Nurse Redheart. I almost wasn't sure she heard me. My voice was dry and cracked. I suspected they didn't want me to talk. In the back of my mind, I was terrified of what the answer might be. Nevertheless, Nurse Redheart responded, a moment later, with a sigh.
She came in about 2 years ago asking about some symptoms she was having. Well, as it would turn out, she was very ill. I told her she had a year to live. Upon hearing this, she told me not to tell any pony until after she was gone. That was winter of 2 years ago. But then in summer, a year and a half ago, she met you, and she began to get strong again. I don't much specialize in psychology, but I suspect that your presence in her life gave her something to live for. Her heart was no longer beating for herself, but for some pony else. Twilight, I think the friendship you offered her prolonged her life greatly.
After this, Nurse Redheart paused, and her demeanor changed slightly. When she spoke again, there was an air of bitterness.
But then you changed, Twilight. You began to tire of her antics. You misinterpreted her desperate cry for help as a hyperactivity and pretended not to notice. That upset her. She couldn't make you smile anymore, and if her friends weren't smiling, she had no reason to smile either. She lost her will to live because you passed her actions off as her typical silliness. Twilight Sparkle, you killed Pinkie Pie.
I stepped back in a pace of shock.
What are you saying?
You brought about the end of her life, plain and simple. By neglecting her, you failed to prolong her life, and so, in essence, you killed her.
No, I never neglected her. I always appreciated her optimism and carefree attitude.
You took her for granted. You made her feel unappreciated and unloved. All that time you kept telling yourself she's just being Pinkie Pie, but you never bothered to understand why.
I had no response. I was completely taken aback by the accusations, but the worst part of it was that it all rang true. Before I could ponder this thought, however, Nurse Redheart continued.
Celestia's favourite student, with the latent ability to foresee the future.
How do you know about that?
If only you had seen it this time, you might have appreciated Pinkie Pie and undone the damage before it was too late.
She gave a shudder and began to change shape.
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
She grew taller, and her shadow enveloped the room.
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
Her face grew darker.
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
Her voice twisted into a demonic tone.
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
At that moment, I heard a distant voice, and it sounded like Pinkie Pie saying, "Wake up! Wake up, Twilight!"
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
"Wake up, Twilight!"
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
"Wake up, Twilight!"
You killed her, Twilight Sparkle.
"Twilight, wake up!" I awoke with a start.
Ah!
It was no longer winter, but rather midsummer. I was rather confused, and it took me a moment to get my bearings. But that moment was still working itself through when I heard it pounding at the front door, and a subsequent blur of a pony zooming through it. "Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up!" Pinkie Pie was bouncing around the room excitedly, and I blinked the drowsiness out of my eyes and tried to comprehend what was going on.
It never happened.
I thought.
It was all a dream.
I inhaled deeply and let out a difficult breath.
A dream, maybe, but definitely not fiction.
I thought it all through. There was nothing made up about our relationship, I realized. I had been very much taking Pinkie Pie for granted. I took the opportunity to make a change. Still a bit upset from the dream, I got up and walked over to Pinkie. She appeared confused as I buried my face in her pink frizzy mane that only fell flat when her heart clouded over. I sighed.
I'm glad we met. And I'm glad we're friends.
Twilight, what's up? Did you have a scary dream?
Yeah, something like that.
I took a deep breath, but caught myself short when I felt Pinkie give a slight tremble.
Pinkie? Are you feeling alright?
Yep, I'm super duper spectacular!
Are your pinky senses giving you any trouble?
Nope, they haven't acted up at all since Froggy brought them back. Twilight, what's up?
No reason. You're sure you're okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. She shuddered again. She was lying. There's something wrong with her. After a second, it clicked.
Princess Celestia told me that one day I'd be able to see the future.
It wasn't a dream at all. It was a vision. Pinkie Pie was actually dying. Why else would she hide that she was ill? It all added up. I'd been given a second chance at this, an opportunity to make things right, and I wasn't going to let it slip by. The important thing, I realized, was not to tell Pinkie Pie that I knew. Doing so would make her prolonged happiness that much more difficult to achieve. I needed to make sure that she knew she was appreciated, and I couldn't do that if she thought I was only doing this to make her happy. That just wouldn't work at all.
So, Pinkie, what do we have going on today?
She grinned wildly. I have no clue! Let's go find out! I smiled weakly, and I felt a pang of guilt that could only come from understanding. What she did to make her friends happy. If they weren't having a good time, she couldn't either. We spent that day like we would have spent any other, having fun with the rest of our friends. Fluttershy and Reinold were hanging out in the meadow, so we decided to join them for a while. Pinkie Pie, as it turned out, got along with the angel extremely well. I never realized how interesting a day in the meadow could be. Every time I had visited before, there were tasks to complete, or issues to sort out. I never stopped to appreciate it. We stayed there past nightfall, and when Luna brought out the moon, we watched the fireflies light up the sky. Afterwards, I walked to Pinkie Pie back to Sugar Cube Corner and said goodnight. Twilight, thanks for being there today. I had a great time.
Yeah, so did I.
Pinkie stifled a slight tremble, and I pretended not to notice. The days passed like this, and each day Pinkie was just as lively as the previous day. Winter came, and I began to worry. It was this time of year I had seen in my dream. Before it was too late, I decided to make one last change. I stopped by Sugar Cube Corner one weekend.
Hey, Pinkie, I have a favor to ask.
Yes, Twilight?
Would you mind showing me how to ice skate?
The pink pony's face lit up. Well, of course, Twilight. Right here. I'll go get my skates. The future I had seen shattered before my eyes. Winter came and passed, and Pinkie Pie, though still showing a slight tremble now and then, was still bouncing around and having a good time. Every single day that passed with Pinkie still alive and throwing parties, I counted as a little victory. Days turned into months and months turned into years, and I counted every victory, and I never forgot a single one. I celebrated exactly 5,724 of these victories. That's 15 years, 7 months, a week, and 2 days before Pinkie Pie threw her final party and drifted off into infinite sleep. At the procession, I stepped up to the altar and took a last look at my good friend. I shed a tear, but rather than holding bitterness in my heart, I held a smile on my face.
Goodbye. And thanks for being an awesome friend.
The end.